Um, I can start. You want to kick it off or?
Yeah. No, well, so I just kicked off the recording, so you can get
Okay,
going, and then
good.
I guess as other people, regulars come in, then we'll just continue on. But yeah, we're recording now.
So welcome to the third meeting of the SIG client group, and this is a quite a short agenda. It's about we kick off with the recap of the action items. Then I want to introduce to you the UI library decision making template. Followed by an open discussion, and as we go along, I will be taking notes and defining action items. So, as a short recap, I have seen discussion in Slack, and that is good. Also, thanks to Alej, a lot of movement there with the browser extension. Then I fixed the calendar, so please visit events nemtech.io for having an overview of when the next meeting is. I'm keeping it updated, and I will also change a little bit the calendar so others can also enter dates, so I don't have to be always there. The mailing list, so I didn't check this one off because we have only 4 people in there. And for example, I would have used the mailing list for posting the links where all the data is, also for changes in the dates, because we postponed this meeting by 1 week. So mailing list would have been actually a good way of this important information out. And yes, this is the next thing we will be seeing. So for the UI library decision-making tool, I have created this with the help of Attila, and this has several, what do you call them, sheets, and this is the overview page. So we are at the status is requested. So this is an ongoing process with 5 decision steps. Here you see a short description of what it is about and some important links. But basically, this is my proposal for a decision-making process. So please just, it's open to discussion. It's not definite. But basically, it goes about the first step, gathering and agreeing on the requirements. And it also explains how and which meetings I mean. And for example, this one would be, and also between the meetings, but basically gathering the requirements, agreeing on also on the expected outcome of such a decision making, and identifying. So in the first step, identifying and analyzing different solutions, and solutions would be UI libraries, and also rating them. Then, of course, deciding and communicating the decision. And these sheets are aligned with also the decision steps. So let me just take you to the next sheet. And don't forget, we are at the first step, so gathering requirements. So basically, here on this sheet, you can post your requirements below. These are just some examples. And these requirements will be posted automatically on the UI library frameworks, or just libraries here. So this is basically the same requirements what is stated in the sheets before. And at another decision-making step, we will match them and give actually a rating in a separate meeting. So coming up with requirements can be asynchronous, but then at a specific meeting, we will give it a grading, also with notes, and also having discussion here. That is also the reason why I locked this sheet, so you cannot enter stuff here yet, because it is for later. And I've included React, I've included Vue and Angular, and we can also take meeting notes for conclusions. And let me jump back to the very first page. This is a very quick overview of this template that I have adapted for our needs, and I would like to ask you what you think about this. Is this something we can make work, or um, do you have any other ideas in approaching this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is Nate. In general, it's good. I mean, I think it at least gives a high-level framework. Like, click on one of the tabs, one of the solution tabs. Right. So I think it's a good way to. We've been, let's say, casually discussing and collecting, talking points again. Let's say casually in the past couple meetings, and I will say ultimately, not that it's going to be a binary decision, but ultimately the one or two or X people that are leading the effort are going to kind of make the hard decision. But it's a good way to kind of just gather feedback and just educate people on, the thinking. So I'd say, yeah, in general, it's good. And we can kind of start kind of populating as we continue to move a little bit further. Obviously, some things will be in movement the next few weeks with certain resources and funding coming online. So yeah, I'd say in general, thumbs up. It's good approach to start with.
Glad to hear that. And also on the first page, I have already some tentative, not dates, but meetings. For example, gathering requirements, of course, I believe this will take another, let's say, 1 or 2 weeks until the next meeting. Between the meetings, and also encouraging the community to participate. Agreeing on the expected outcome, I think this is this is a formal thing, because here it is stated that that's a good. Then we can use the mailing list and Slack. So basically, getting the buy-in from all of us to stick to some kind of a timeline to have things moving forward. So you said you are expecting more movement. Shall we increase everything by one? I mean, by a month, or do you already have?
Yeah, I mean, at least by one. I mean, again, so like, if you, I mean, realistically, there will be some community participants, but they're not going to be driving things, right? It's going to be full-time dedicated people, and that's going to come from most likely one of 2 or 3 teams, and pretty much everyone's kind of going through funding, budget, onboarding, like now and for the next few weeks. So I don't see a focused effort really starting probably at least for a few weeks, but some of those resources might start coming online from like a ramp up perspective. I mean, I can't speak specifically because I'm not the decision maker in those orgs, besides what I do day to day, but definitely not today, and definitely probably not next week, but probably pretty soon. Some of these decisions and the resources that are going to be the leads, let's say, on this will kind of come online and start participating. So I'd say a starting point is to like increase by one and say, the next meeting, whether it's next week or the week after. But that's kind of at the best we know today, right? And every week we kind of get a little bit more granularity as far as timelines and commitments by everyone.
Good. So I will regularly encourage people in Slack, through Slack, but also posting some other requirements, more refined ones, not just examples, but really aimed at this task here. And let's see how it develops over the next months. So I'm jumping back. So a question. So I see agreement in the chat window, and not more comments. So I take this as confirmation. Okay, I'm jumping back. Great. Yeah, looking forward. I'm jumping back to the presentation. Now, I don't have another agenda item. Does anyone have for the open discussion? I have already here one thing. But before we go into the planning, let's stay a topic of tech. Does anyone have an open discussion item?
I know Alicia's on, so if obviously there's been chat going on as people have been picking away at the extension, but we can kind of just use that as like again, what's been going on in text form for the past week. We can kind of just maybe just give a quick update, and conversations will continue on Slack going forward. But I'd say that's probably a good one.
I wasn't listening. Do you mean the browser extension? Like fast update about the browser extension or something else? Because
yeah. I mean, like that's kind of, if you say current client topics, we kind of have like base web wallet effort. We have kind of blockchain explorer effort, but nothing's really moving, and no one's here today that has been digging into that yet. At least I don't think so. Like Jeff's not here today. And I know him and his guys were kind of doing some of the heavier thinking and prototyping on that, or at least going to be starting. So besides base web wallets, block explorer, kind of the other topic that's kind of been going on is you've been, posting and moving things along and iterating on the browser extension. So probably just quick update, even if it's kind of repetitive of what's been going on Slack.
Yeah, because I am quite repetitive. So I post all the stuff. Can I share my screen so I can pull everything? I can have an update of the people that has been doing. So super fast update that will take 1-2 minutes.
Do you want to share your screen, or should I go to the GIF? So I'm sharing.
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna try. So I'm gonna try to share my Firefox screen. Do you see my screen? Great. So super fast. This send transaction has been done I buy Crack the Code. So it's everything made by him. So thank you, Crack the Code, to make this web page. The good thing here is that we are using the code version of Planet Yuki. So it's everything here. It's almost community driven. We have received this also as a contribution, like, hey, provide primary key or some developer mode. So someone found that from Luxtech, if I remember correctly, that there was a lack of something and said, okay, I don't mind to have this. So he contributed, and then we accepted this contribution. And now we are working on generate these wallets and then configure the node and then save, and then so it is more moving forward. We don't have super like home transaction history and something else, but we are like receiving contributions. Like here, we find like 2 weeks of project life, we have 6 contributions per request. So people is quite engaged. So that's the main idea, like joking. And just to notify, like to clarify why I'm doing this, is because of basically this URL. So my idea of when the browser will be more or less complete is where we have these features, basic features, so nothing too much complex, like sending, receiving, and then displaying information, but then allowing us to have these another web pages that we can say, okay, announce transfer transaction, click here, and then opens. As you see now, it's working. So now we handle the transaction, and then we pop up and then send the transaction in the browser, in the wallet browser instead of the web page. So this is the main goal of this extension, like integrate this web page with a wallet, and then we have this in like a web page using Catapult, and then clicking announce, and then opening the website, and then announcing. So that's the main process that we want to achieve here. So update done. Super fast. So I hope you like what people is doing, because it's almost pull request driven and there is no plan. So it's more like people finding gaps and then saying, okay, I'm gonna create this component and then just doing a pull request. So it's very on-demand features made by contributors. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you for the quick overview. You say this, is there any other message you want to get out for those who will be watching this at a later moment?
Well, probably this will be moved to more community like nemtech if it becomes more used. So now it's more like a proof of concept to verify that this is useful, and then having 4 or 5, like a working wallet, but not super well defined. So it's a proof of concept of how we can make something very community driven, and like in Spanish it's called pupurri, like not planet development. So it's more like people pushing things. So we are quite yeah, let's say on demand stuff. So I hope you enjoy, and then we have something working in 2 weeks, because people, if we're going in this speed, probably in 2 weeks we can have something. But if we stop receiving contributors, then it's gonna take longer. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, I have one question. I don't know if I missed something important, but what's the difference between the nem2 wallet and this CV extension?
Nem2, what? So
I mean, potentially nothing, and then potentially just 2 different projects. So basically, the idea for the quote unquote like nem2 base wallet that we're kind of just calling it is generic web wallet that is meant for like end users. That is essentially what will become probably the base foundation for like what is the current like nano wallet, but like the new generation of it. This one, Alicia kind of brought up like, hey, I need something I kind of want to start playing around with now. So I'm just going to start hacking some stuff together using, a Firefox extension, and not really worried about security, not worried about kind of general UX or usability. It's more from like a development wallet perspective, and then we'll see where it goes. So organically, this could maybe morph into the base web wallets. But that wouldn't be tomorrow, and it wouldn't be next week. It would be maybe a few weeks down the road or something. We don't know, right? So I guess the answer is we don't know today. But as of now, it's just a standalone, right? There's a couple other standalone wallet efforts that exist, and ones we don't know about as well, I assume. So, but not just web, but also like mobile wallets that people have been hacking around on. So as things progress, maybe this morphs into something that's, as Alicia said, like kind of like a community focus, and it merges over. But maybe not. We don't know. We'll just kind of keep, people that are interested and find use in it, like participate. Let's use it. Let's provide feedback when people ask for feedback, or you proactively have it, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for clarifying. It's exactly what you said. Like, we are not planning to do anything super secure, anything super well defined, and then we just having like this, finding if there's some needs here, because I have this need, but maybe other people also find there is a need. So it's like, okay, as a developer, I want to try and solve this, and if there is the need, people will contribute back. If people doesn't contribute back, it's because no people is using it, and nobody is finding the need to make it, and maybe it died. So we don't know. That's why we don't have this strong qualification and going forward. So it's just a testing, a proof of concept. And if people find it useful, maybe it keeps going, and then going with the required things like security and so on and so forth. Because now there is no security, there's nothing. It's more like for development.
Okay, great, thanks.
And is there any reason, if you go back to the UI framework, why you choose the Vue?
Let's say was Friday night. I just needed a framework, Vue. I just don't like Facebook stuff, so I prefer to go to Vue, which is more open and community. Yeah. So no real reason, just new framework. I wanted to try it, and yeah, that's why.
Okay.
Okay, so I would say we can move to the other open discussion item. So I have put it in here, meeting time rotation. The meeting is quite late in Europe, 11 p.m. For Otto, it's even midnight. And I was wondering if we want to do one rotation. So switching it up, and it would be, I don't know, early in the morning for you, Nate, and then in the afternoon for us, or something like that.
Yeah, I'd say probably the one that makes sense is late night, pretty much the equivalent nighttime for US. That probably makes more sense than early US. Most likely, right? So I mean, either way, we're kind of between Asia, US, and EU. There's always going to be like midday, night, and morning for some people. I would say, at least preferably on my end, like nighttime is definitely easier than morning. And it's also not as late for APAC. We kind of like proposed, hey, do we want to do some time optimization for APAC? And some people chimed in. These were on some other meetings, like, oh no, morning's fine or whatever. But if we gave them the option for the afternoon, I assume they would be fine with that as well, right? So I'm pretty much, let's say, I mean, not every day, but a lot of days I'm relatively flexible on timing. So, I mean, if we're going to rotate it every, let's say, 4 meetings or something, I would say next rotation would probably be like morning EU time, nighttime US, afternoon, midday afternoon, APAC, depending on where you're at, of course.
Sounds good to me. You said every fourth. You mean already at the next meeting? Yeah,
I mean, again, I had kind of proposed in some other meetings, like, hey, do we want to, switch these things up? And people said no. So I would say, let's just do the same thing. Let's post it on the Slack, and then kind of let people chime in with comments. I can't remember which meeting that was. If it was, I don't know, it was either the API meeting or some other one. There's some meeting maybe a week or two ago. I said, hey, we're starting to have like 3-4 meetings a week potentially, and we're kind of, does anyone want other times so we can like rotate them and switch them up? And people said, no, just keep everything the same. And I was like, okay. So that's what we were doing at least the past couple of weeks. So I would say, let's just post specifically for the client group. Let's post it and say like, hey, do we want to do the next batch of meetings and whatever, right? Like, again, I would, if I'm going to have a preference, I would prefer it to be nighttime, US time. Whether that's 10 p.m. or midnight or whenever, doesn't really matter for me. I mean, just like EU, like as you push to midnight and beyond, it kind of starts to get, not the greatest, but let's just propose it, let people kind of chime in, and then we can go from there, and kind of decide over the next week or so. So maybe let's keep the next meeting the same, and then that gives us a week or 2 weeks lead time to kind of have the conversation and then start getting scheduled and notification, right? I think that would probably make sense. So that would kind of be like a impromptu every 5th meeting we rotate or something, right? To kind of
and what do you think about having the next meeting not next week but on the 27th of March?
I would say I kind of say this for all the groups. Let's plan for weekly meetings and then cancel. So I know you mentioned you're away. So I would say let's plan for next week. And if it seems like there's no clamoring for a particular topic or set of questions or dialogue or whatever, then we'll just push it out. But if there's more movement on the browser extension, if someone's onboarding in some of the org and they're starting to think about the web wallet, if there's more questions about other UI, UX things, if something comes up for Block Explorer in the next week, then we should probably just have it, even if it's this is kind of a quicker meeting, even if they're quicker. So I'd say let's just plan to have it next week, and then if we don't need it, we won't do, kind of like we did last week. It wasn't that we didn't need it, but it was kind of like, well, some people can't make it. There's no clamoring for any topics, so let's just push it out, right? And no one really said anything of like, no, let's have it. I need to, present this. So I'd say that's kind of, let's use that as the approach, and then we'll just reevaluate going into next week.
Okay, clear to me. So, any other open discussion items, points, topics?
Maybe something about CLI, or is...
All right. So the CLI had a dependency on the SDK. Just taking a quick look in my notes. So as I understand, the CLI has a dependency, there was a dependency, or actually there was a bug in the SDK, and people were waiting for getting that fixed so the mosaic split can be implemented in the CLI, or actually the pull request accepted. And after that, Steven will also get to add options to add alias and account filters. So there's some work going on, but of course the SDK has now a high priority. But gradually the CLI will support the most basic features.
Okay, thank you.
So this is the information I had, the last information when talking to Steven and Greg.
Okay, so you need to wait a little bit more.
The chat. Yeah, I will ask again tomorrow in the chat so everyone sees the response.
Yeah, since they're not on, we can just say, hey, just post a quick little sentence or two on an update. And the idea, that we're trying to do going forward, right now it's kind of like get things out, like release, let's say, kind of release early and often. So even if features aren't complete, like stuff can be used. So we're trying to get the SDK to at least most compatibility with Cow Plus. There's minimal churn to almost no churn potentially at the interface level coming in the next Dragon release. So with the minimal to no churn, it allows everything to kind of like, let's say, catch up. So CLI is hopefully a fast follower to the SDK, in the coming week or two. And then going forward, we'll try to figure out some cadence of, we probably won't denote CLI as a dependency. We're trying to use documentation testing and the JS SDK as like a dependency for release validation. For now, we definitely won't use the CLI as like, hey, the CLI has to support every feature to be quote unquote like released and stamped, at least not now. Maybe post Dragon we will, but we'll see kind of where things fall. But yeah, we'll have them post again a couple of blurbs since they weren't able to hop on today to report back.
Okay.
Good. So let me check the chat window if there is now. There's one more chat. Okay.
If I can ask, if just to have the feedback from the other audience, people listening, what they feel that they can contribute more, like just to have the people feedback. So if someone says, okay, I will be more comfortable in doing X, Y, Z to contribute back, because maybe we're missing some useful feedback from people that is listening now. So if someone says, I can contribute if this is done in a different way, maybe we can adapt, or maybe we can do another stuff. So, but for me, it's worth to ask. Maybe no one has a strong opinion and they're okay, but worth to ask. Just a suggestion.
Anyone?
Can I give one thing? When I tried the browser extension to run it, I was quite looking in the README to find to set it up, but apparently it's in the wiki. So maybe put also something in the README how to quickly set it up.
Okay, so it was more in global, but for extension, I appreciate the feedback as well. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna move this information to README. So thank you.
Well, silence is always a difficult thing in these calls.
Yeah, I mean, I would say kind of like other calls. Oh, we got popped up. Yeah, I mean, if people aren't chiming in now, again, just drop messages on the Slack whenever, and bring up new topics, ask questions, and then any other interest areas, hop on those meetings as well as we continue on. And yeah, thanks everyone for hopping on this one.
Okay. Well, so there is another post in the chat. So we've
yeah, I mean, so I would say along these lines, let's say that the base requirement, probably pretty much, I'd say the two biggest things, and they're not 100% dependent, but they kind of are, is UI framework, and then let's call it module/extension plugin framework, or however you want to refer to it. Those are probably the two. Like, we know the wealth of features that we can and probably will implement. And so like the first kind of two questions, and we won't like nail it. It's not like we're going to say, this is the framework, this is the plugin design, go, and it's done instantly. It's going to be somewhat iterative. But I think basically that those are the first, in my mind, the first from a productization, like architecture perspective, picking the UI framework and then getting this module plugin framework are the good first approaches. And then I guess the other one is, picking one framework for all. That would kind of be the hope. We definitely aren't going to require it because just given the nature of the project being open source and federated, not only just across the world, but also like organization of both volunteers and like paid day-to-day jobs. We can't say you will use this. If someone's paying someone to do a job and their company's, doing Angular, but the rest of the project's using, React, we're not, and if they're going to contribute something substantial, we don't want to be like, no, don't do your Angular. But they're like, hey, we do all Angular for all of our apps, right? We don't want to like prohibit them. But that's kind of part of this conversation that's going on now. We don't really have the dedicated slots for, contributors for all of these parts yet. It's kind of starting to materialize. So the hope is we kind of pick one that's kind of used either completely across all efforts, but again, we don't want to be like, we don't want to orgs that are paying people to do their day job who are also contributing to this. While we'd like to influence them to use the same one that everyone else is using, if push comes to shove, we'll be like, okay, let's adopt it. Again, we haven't had any of those types of like conversations yet. Hopefully we never have them and everyone just agrees and it's great. But I imagine those will come in the next probably 3 weeks or so.
Okay, thank you for answering the questions from the group chat. I think this meeting is pretty much, we arrived at the end.
Right. Well, yeah, everyone have a good day or night or morning, and then see everyone on Slack.
All right, goodbye.
See you.
Thanks for joining.